All right, everybody stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Remain standing, Father.
Father God, we just come before the throne right now, God. We just ask you to continue to give us the wisdom and the knowledge that we need and the discernment, God, to do the right thing for these people that we represent. And God, we just praise you for all you do for us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Jill, roll call.
Frank Besson. Carl Edmondson. Senator Guillory. Amy Matthews. Here. Stephen LaFleur. Kevin Marcel.
Here.
Erwin Miller. Andrea Hubbard. Here. Representative Pearson. Bobby Smith. And Miss Marcia Pressback. Here. We do have a quorum.
We do.
We do not.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we do not.
So being that we do not have a quorum, we're not going to be able to vote or anything officially, but we will go through the agenda and go from there. Do we have any public comments? What do you mean? No public comments? All right. Item 4 was the election of the board chairman and vice chairman, which is going to have to be delayed till the next meeting, along with the appointment of the 2015 committee members. Instead of approval of minutes, we're just going to go ahead and look through the minutes from December 17th, 2015, and take a look at it and to see if you have any questions. For that, should be under tab number 1.
Kevin, maybe just a point of clarification. Denise, with not having a quorum today to elect a new chairman and vice chairman as well as appoint the committees, will the committees and chairman and vice chairman that are currently in place continue to serve until the elections take place?
They will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So under tab 1, I just want to review. Earl, anything stood out that you want to talk about from the last board meeting?
I did not note anything in here that needed to be expanded upon unless there are some questions that somebody would have that maybe we could answer for you. But other than that, the audit was done and completed, and we got the audit report last board meeting, and things went well with that audit. Other than that, it was pretty much of a standard meeting. I welcome any questions and try to answer them.
Okay. Under tab 2, we had the investment committee minutes from January 14, 2015. Amy?
Okay, so in general, we went over, well, we spoke with Templeton and Aberdeen. We were trying to get everybody to chat with us just to make sure everything's doing okay. So we were fine with those guys. We did manager evaluations which Erwin will go over shortly. And then in general, we looked at our priorities for this year. And we will be getting some folks in to just go over some liquid alternative strategies and master limited partnerships. We're also going to be looking at mid-cap active versus passive managers. I think in general we're happy with the passive, but we're also just going to re-examine that. And then private equity, we've decided to go ahead and continue our investment with that group. And as time goes on, we'll be looking at possibly taking some money off of the domestic equities and maybe moving that around into some other positions. So we also are, our committee, the committee also decided the priorities for 2015 would be the portfolio rebalancing, to continue with the allocation of private equity, to allocate a little bit more to the active mid-cap space as just an alternative, and then education on those other items we spoke about. And then, of course, Erwin went over Campbell Timber, and I think he'll probably have something to say about that. And so that was it.
You want to discuss Campbell right now?
Yeah, I'll just, since it's already mentioned here, I'll just say that there's been a further update. We continue to meet bi-weekly with the Campbell Steering Committee. It has come to light in the last 2 to 3 weeks that CalPERS has made a decision to terminate all of their timber holdings. They have also made a decision to get out of all of their alternatively managed assets. That's what's driving this thing. Just to remind some of you board members who've not heard before, we're looking at several options with Campbell's portfolio. There's a portion of the portfolio that is leveraged, meaning that money was borrowed in order to purchase the timberland. And that portion is struggling with its cash flows from the timber sales because number one, demand has been down for timber due to the housing industry here in the United States primarily. And number two, the pricing on that timber has been down. So naturally they're going to struggle with their cash flow, and that's exactly what's happened to them. So we're looking at two options. One would be to restructure the lending agreements, which I would favor at this point in time, and which I think can be done, because if you look at the timber industry, the fourth quarter of 2014 was the best quarter that the timber industry has had since about 2007, when we went into the basically into a depression almost in the housing and timber industry here in the United States. And as a result, it would not be a good time, I don't think, to liquidate everything. Let's ride this thing out like we had intended to do. I think the pricing is coming back nicely, and I think the models will show that. Campbell has hired two people, Loki, who is a consulting firm that deals primarily with the renegotiation of contracts. They're going to try to renegotiate the contracts with primarily the Ag Lending Bank, and I think that's being done as we speak. And the second alternative would be to sell all of the portfolio, which would be my least attractive option. But the reason why that's being done is I think CalPERS, who is the largest participant in this fund, has made the decision to get out of the timber, and they just want their money. They don't, whatever cost, they want to get out. So I think it came to light in the last two meetings that we've had that this has become very adversarial. The Campbell Timber people are the general partner in this fund that we're in. They will make the decisions, and that's the comfort that I have at this point in time. I've had private conversations with the portfolio manager, and he and I are on the same page as far as what we think the timber industry is like and what our best option might be. So by March the 8th, we will have all of the options on the table, the renegotiating the contracts by Houlihan and Loki. UBS is working with the sale of the whole portfolio, and they'll present their findings to the committee on March the 8th. And at that time, we'll know better what's going to take place. But keep in mind that the final decision is in the hands of the general partner according to the operating partnership agreement. Campbell Timber will make that decision, and we'll have some input, but not much. So cautiously optimistic that the right decision is going to be made. I think everybody understands now why the forced sale was being looked at so strongly, and it would certainly not be in our advantage to have to do that right now. Any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them. Amy, did you have questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, under tab number 3, we have the executive committee meetings, a meeting held on February the 10th. The main discussions we had for that meeting were the discussion of the actual continuation thereof from Charles Hall's pending retirement, and also the discussion of the retirement system software program that we're looking to change. And Erwin, you want to expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, let me touch on both of those very quickly. The actuarial services, Charles Hall and I met back in December talking about his impending retirement, and you know how much, I think each of you know how much Charles means to this system and how much I think he means, we mean to him. Charles indicated in that meeting that his desire would be to work with us at least through December the 31st of this year, this calendar year. If he goes beyond that, it means that he would have to get continuing education credit, and that would be a fairly expensive proposition. I think it would probably run in the ballpark of $3,000 to $5,000 depending upon the location and the extent of the programs that Charles would have to participate in, but about $3,000 to $5,000. But he said if we could work that out, then he would be willing to stay on through June 30th of 2016, one more fiscal year after this one. So after that, I came back and talked with Kevin a little bit. I talked with Frank, and Frank and I had lunch with Charles Hall in early January. Charles basically reiterated that his feelings were not changed. He wants to stay with the state police retirement system. He will terminate his relationship, and he is in the process of doing so with the school employees. So we will be his only client, other than serving as a consultant for teachers and lasers, I believe. We will be his only full-time client, and as he described it, our relationship is a pleasant one, that we enjoy working with him and he enjoys working with us. So after that, came back and talked a little bit more with Frank and Kevin to keep them informed. Then I had lunch with Gary Curran and Greg Curran. They are the only option when Charles retires for the local actuarial service. And they do a very good job with the statewide systems that they serve. And I wanted to just get their feelings and to let them know kind of what our timeline looks like as we think about where do we go with Charles retiring. And they indicated to me that they were both very interested in taking us on as a client. They perceive the state police to be a plum for their business. It would be the first of the state systems that they would work with. But since having that lunch, I found out that Elsers has engaged Gary Curran and Greg Curran as far as their actuarial services, and they will be changing June 15th, June 30th, 2015. So they'll actually be changing before we do, probably. And that I went back to them and explained to them what our timing looked like and asked them if they would have a problem if we went to June 30th, 2016 with Charles, allowing him to serve out his time with us and then transition to them, and they said absolutely not. So what I had hoped to do today was with the board's approval, but since we don't have a quorum, we won't be able to do it today. My hope was to send a letter of intent to Gary and Greg Curran and let them know that pending the retirement of Charles Hall, our intentions are that we would move to Curran and Associates as our actuarial services for the future going forward. And they were very appreciative of that gesture. It's nothing more than a gesture on our part, but I wanted to do things to let them know that we do want to be with them and we don't want them to get loaded down. My biggest fear is that if something happened with teachers or lasers here in Louisiana as far as their actuarial services, if they were to get in line with Curran and Associates, I don't think Gary and them could have the capacity to handle us at that point in time. So I wanted to get in line before teachers and lasers primarily. And maybe we'll visit this at the April 15th, next April. I don't know exactly what the date is there in April, but at our next board meeting, we'll visit this, and I'll get approval from the board, if that's okay with you, to go ahead and write that letter of intent to Greg and Gary Curran and let them know what our intentions are. So that's kind of where we stand. We'll stay in line with Charles Hall until June 30th, 2016, transition to Greg Curran and Gary Curran at that time. The discussion of the software program for the retirement system is a question that I guess Kim and I have discussed off and on now for about 3 to 5 years. As we have watched the support for our system that we're currently on, which was a program that we purchased from Roger Dietrich, who was the proprietor there. We purchased that back in about 1998 or 99. And Kim was actually here when we converted to that system, and we've had a good relationship with Roger, but he has reached the point where he is no longer supporting that software package. We're running somewhat in a position for the last few months, although Roger will help us if we can get a hold of him. He's a retired guy basically now, and he does a little traveling, and it's kind of hard to get his help sometimes when we need him. But in looking at different options, we found some that were very pricey, but yet still not flexible enough to allow a system our size to do what we need to do as timely as we need to do it. The difference for us from the statewide systems is our reporting sequence of information to the legislature and to the legislative bodies is very constricting, and you have to meet those deadlines without any flaws there. And we're very concerned about that going forward. So Kim, maybe you can take just a minute. Our intention was that we would have Colo McDonald here from Exego today. Kim and I have met with him. We met with the executive committee back on February the 10th and had them learn a little bit about Colo and Exego and what we intended to do. And Colo was supposed to be here today, but through a mix-up in schedules, he was not able to make the meeting today, so we felt like better than do a phone conference, we want him in here in person so that you could meet him and see what his product looks like. But maybe Kim, if you could take just a minute and update the board on the situation there and what it looks like from your perspective.
Well, as Erwin stated, I was here back in 98, 99 when we made the transition from, well, actually, we didn't have a software program. We were using the Department of Public Safety, and they were providing us with support. So we went to Dietrich Microsystems. A lot of the retirement systems already had that. So, you know, we performed our due diligence and asked all of the other retirement systems and visited with them, and anyway, decided to go with Dietrich. But over time, Roger Dietrich's system has become a little bit difficult to work with. Every system has now moved away from it except for us. It is a DOS-based program. If you know anything about programming, then you'll know how antiquated it is.
Yeah.
And so what we were looking for was something that was more web-based, and you know, technology is constantly changing. And so one of the problems that we ran into the last time that we had to upgrade our computers here in the office is the DOS-based program does not like Windows 7. And so in my mind, as technology advances, and it rapidly advances, this software will become unusable to us. So over the years, as Erwin said, we've asked different questions. We've investigated different software programs. Some of them were just way out of our range financially, because we are one of the smaller, we are the smallest state system. And so, you know, we can't justify spending, you know, $1 million on a software program, whereas maybe teachers or lasers could. So cost was a big factor for us, and then the other factor was that most of the programs that we investigated tended to be geared toward private pension plans, like 401ks and things like that. So you have a little bit of trouble finding public pension plan software. Year before last, I was in touch with Firefighters Retirement System, Kelly, who worked there then, who was investigating software options, and she had even traveled to, I believe, Texas to visit with a police facility there that had a software package, and so she shared all of her research with me, and we looked at all of that. So I guess the moral to that story is, over the last several years, we've really been investigating to see what was out there. Well, I found out about a company called Exego quite by accident. At the Labor's Conference in September, I was talking with the Director of Assessors, and she told me they were in the process of transitioning to Exego. So I had a real in-depth conversation with her about it. Of course, I was interested. So I have since then visited with her, looked at her program, had a very nice visit with her last week. Tasha went with me last week because Tasha is the second most familiar person with what we have now, and so I just felt like she needed to be in on this. Since Assessors has gone to the software package that Exego offers, Clerks has come into it. So Clerks Retirement System now has it. I visited with Clerks Retirement System 2 weeks ago. Both systems have nothing but great things to say about Exego. Are there limitations? Sure. I think there will be with any systems that we go to. So Erwin and I have met. I've met with Carlo McDonald. He's the owner. And I even have a bio here that we can pass out that you guys can look at his background. But as Erwin said, he was going to be here today to give us a short presentation, and due to a communication problem between he and I, it just didn't work out. So we've investigated this. It looks like something that we may want to go with. I've even asked Mr. McDonald for a bid. So I will tell you that in 1999, when I asked for a bid from Roger Dietrich, we paid $40,000 for his software program. The bid for Exego came in at two prices: $27,000 if we go to what they call the cloud, and $29,000 if we house everything here on site on our own network. So that would be a decision that we would want to make when and if we decide to go with this option. So It's looking pretty good. It's looking like something that we may want to do. It is web-based. What this program does is it follows the life cycle of a member. From the time they enter the system, whatever they do as an active member, whether they purchase service, transfer service, terminate, return, repay a refund, then they retire, their record continues into retirement. If they choose a backdrop, it goes into backdrop. If they pass, their survivor picks up their record. So you have one record on this person that follows them throughout their lifetime, which is a drawback of Dietrich systems, because we have basically three systems that we have to keep up with: the active side, the retiring side, and then there's a drop side. So I think it's going to be, it's going to be something that's going to be easier to follow once we get the hang of it. We've been used to working with Dietrich for the last, 15 years. So there is a familiarity there. Change is hard for a lot of people, but overall, I think this is going to be a move that that's going to be good for the retirement system. One of the questions that I asked both clerks and assessors, if you had to go back to Dietrich, would you? Absolutely not. So I think it's something that we need to do. We need to decide on. Erwin and I have developed kind of a list of system priorities for 2015. That's one of the things that's on the list, just because the program is so antiquated and we need to make a change before something happens and our data is out there vulnerable, or we can't make payroll because the system doesn't like our new technology. So I think it's time that we decide on something and make a change. And this looks like a very, the price came in good. I was very pleased with it. I was a little shocked when it came in because we paid $40,000 for Dietrich that long ago. But that's kind of where we are. Carlo was very upset that he couldn't be here. He's very well thought of. Both assessors and clerks, the director's there, very intelligent guy. He has a staff of 13. And that was another drawback of Dietrich. He's a one-man shop. So one of the things all of us retirement systems used to talk about is what if something happens to Roger? Well, we're really left high and dry. With Carlo, he seems to have a transition plan in place in his company. He has a programmer that's designated solely for retirement software, but he has other programmers that could certainly back this guy up if they needed to. And he has a staff of 13. His office is here in Baton Rouge, and he's currently in the process of opening another office in New Orleans. So far, we like what we see. I'm still going to do a little bit of visiting with clerks because I want to look at their audit and actuarial reports and make darn sure that it's all compatible with what we need for our actuary, because that's one of the big things that's a concern for us: 1099 reporting, actuary information, audit information. And it seems to be running smoothly for them, and they use Current and Associates, who is the actuary that we're considering going to in 2016. So at some point, I guess, we'll need after further investigating on Erwin and I's part, we'll come back to you and make a recommendation to you, and you can decide if we want to go ahead and make that move.
Okay, thank you for that, Kim.
Okay.
They had another item that was on the agenda for the executive committee. And Bob, you want to step out? All right, Erwin, I guess you can explain why we have stepped on this.
At the executive committee meeting at the end, Frank asked that we talk about upcoming legislation. And in particular, he wanted to ask the committee's thoughts about proposing a benefit increase for the catastrophically disabled troopers, which would include Bobby. So that's why Bobby stepped out. And quite honestly, we've had a lot of discussions. I've talked with Frank a couple of times about it. I've spoken with Kevin a few times about it. And I went over and met with Bobby to talk about this issue. Because number one, I don't think you could I don't know if you could find a worse time to bring legislation to the legislature right now, especially legislation that might have a cost associated with it. And this would have a cost associated with it. We've sent some information to Charles Hall relating to the 10 individuals who are catastrophically disabled. And just for you new board members and for those of you who may not be as familiar with it as others, back in about 2004, we proposed legislation for catastrophically disabled troopers. And by that, we described that as troopers who lost their eyesight, as Bobby did, troopers who had lost their hearing, troopers who had lost a body part, arms, legs, things of that nature, troopers who had lost organs, and we have a trooper or two who have lost organs, and we also have a trooper, several of them who are paralyzed. Some of them have no mental capacity to act for themselves because of injuries they sustained in the performance of their duties. At that time when this legislation was passed, it was sunset, which means that no other troopers who are catastrophically disabled after 2004, when this bill was implemented, could receive this benefit. At the time something like that were to happen, we would have to go back to the legislature and get those people approved for some type of catastrophic injury benefit. And the reason why that sunset was put in place was cost containment. As you can imagine, if you open the door and you don't have a closure to that door, you can continue to accrue benefits and continue to cost the system hundreds, if not thousands, and millions of dollars into the future in form of liability. So that's why it was sunset. These 10 individuals are in there. What I did was go back and look and see, why did we choose that $36,000 a year benefit that they received? It actually is $3,000 a month or $36,000 per year. That benefit is tax-free for those injured in the line of duty. So basically, if you assume a person were in a 20% tax bracket, which may be higher and may be low depending upon the individual, but it's a reasonably normal sort of tax bracket, then the $36,000 amounts to about $47,000 or so dollars. On the other hand, what Bobby was talking about and what Frank indicated in the meeting with the executive committee was, what really should be right, as opposed to just choosing $36,000, is allowing a trooper, when he signs on, their intention is to work until they retire. That's the intent of almost every trooper. Doesn't always happen, but that's their intent. And if they worked until they were at least a master trooper, which means if you served 25 years in the state police, you did not attain any rank, you just became what everybody typically becomes, and that is a master trooper. That master trooper, for most of these guys in that group of 10 individuals, would retire somewhere between $62,000 and $65,000 a year before taxes. And if you took an after-tax look at that, assuming that same 20% tax bracket, then they would be receiving about $48,000 or $49,000. And what I found out was, when I analyzed this, basically these individuals that have retired at that $36,000 tax-free amount are receiving about the same amount of money that a master trooper in their class would have received after taxes. So I don't feel like that there is a huge issue that we have in terms of financial, trying to reward these people what they deserve from the standpoint of their position. What I have a hard time with is putting a price on how much it's worth to give up your eyesight, or how much is it worth to give up a body organ, or to be paralyzed to such an extent that you can't function as a human being in a normal situation. So it really is a tough question. Bobby is very sensitive about these things, but we've had some very detailed discussions about these things, and the bottom line is there's no amount of money that anybody could ever compensate any of us to give up what he basically has given up, along with these other 9 individuals. So where we left it was, number one, we asked Denise to go ahead and get us a bill placed to hold in case we decided to move forward as a board with wanting to do something to increase this level of compensation for catastrophically disabled troopers. She has done that. The biggest issue there will be we'll have to find a legislator, and in this case it must be a representative because we missed the deadline for the Senate bills to be filed. We did catch it for the deadline there for the representatives, and we would have to find a representative who would sponsor the bill, who they're only allowed 5 bills for them each year. So, it's going to be a question of, number one, do we think it's the right thing to do at the right time to do it, and can we find a legislator who will be willing to sponsor this bill? There are a lot of things up in here.
The day, the 27th, the last day to file retirement?
February 20th.
We've already advertised
No,
it.
no,
It's the 28th.
Yeah, it's actually, the last time we filed them is up till the start of the session, which is in April, but retirement bills themselves had to be advertised 60 days before they're introduced.
Retirement bills have to be pre-filed.
At the end of this month.
Yeah, I believe they have to be pre-filed by the end of February. It's either a 30 or 60-day window. I've got it written on the calendar in there.
So, we're on a very tight timetable in order to get that done, and I don't, number one, I don't think it's necessarily the right time to do this. In terms of what the legislature is going to have to go through, it's going to be a traumatic experience down there for the higher education people. The health and welfare people are going to really have to struggle to find funds, and probably not the ideal time, but I wanted to at least make you aware of it. I think it's a good time for us to be aware of this situation and maybe analyze it more carefully and have more time to talk about it. And if we decide to go forward, perhaps next year would be a more appropriate time to do that. Kevin, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, I mean, I agree, there's no amount of money that can replace somebody's, sight or, any limbs or organs or whatnot, so, I mean, there's no arguing the fact that these guys deserve everything they can get, but, of course, timing is everything. Legislature, as we've seen with, things recent and past, and with that, you need a funding source, and to get a funding source, and with this budget coming up, would be a very hard task, so I'm of the opinion that, I think it's not the right time. Obviously, I think it's the right thing to do, but the timing is not there. It's just my opinion, and we discussed it, and, wanted to bring y'all to light with what we were talking about. I'm sure we'll discuss it further soon, but.
I guess the fact that we don't have a quorum today means we can't do
Well,
anything.
exactly.
So we're going to miss that deadline.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. So maybe a moot point anyway.
Yeah.
That's what we have with that. Anybody had anything else to say on that topic? Okay. You get out. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move to item number 7, it's under tab 4. Robert's gonna discuss it.
Thanks. Okay. So basically, this is as of January, the end of January report. And you can see that we finished January with $621 million in assets, 389 in equities, that's 62.7%. So a little bit over target, but that's a result of performance, but we're still within guidelines. Fixed income is at $125 million, so 20% roughly of the portfolio. And then on our alternative investments, 14.3%. And you can see the breakdown there with, roughly 6.2% is in real estate. Real estate, we have more going with Person JP Morgan, more money going there. We're starting to get called on the prudential money, so that should be, in the next few quarters, probably fully funded. We got 4.9% in our hedge funds, target's 5%. Or we talked a little bit about the Campbell Group, and then Hancock's, that's about 1.6% of the portfolio. And then our private equity, 1.6, and we're building that up over time. Just you get commitments and you got to fund it, and it takes many years before that actually gets to fully invested. So that's where we are with the overall. So everything's within guidelines. If you flip to the next page, the calendar year started off tough in January. If you look at the current month, you can see a lot of negative numbers. So that's basically for the month of January. Our total domestic equities were down 2%, 1.5%. Excuse me, our international equity was down 0.13%. So our total equities were down 1.6 overall. If you keep going down that same column, you'll see our fixed income managers were basically up about 1% overall. So when you combine those two, we're down slightly for the month. If you flip to the next page and go down the column, which is like the fourth and fifth column, where it says current month, and you can see for the month of January, the portfolio was down 0.74%. I will tell you that if we took a snapshot today, we gained it all back. The equity markets are up, in fact, I think the S&P is up almost 5% this month, so it's very strong recovery there. If we look at our fiscal year-to-date number, just stay on that last page, you can see basically for the fiscal year-to-date, we're basically flat, down 0.34%. Again, if we took a snapshot as of today, we probably are slightly up, is my guess, maybe up 1%. But I think it's going to be a fiscal year that, this will be the first one we haven't had a really big return. Last year it was 17+% return, but look at our 3-year number, 10.95, our 5-year number, 10.5%, and then going back to inception, which is back in 1990, up 7.69%. So I think, Erwin, this is, unless we get something, a big bump in the market or whatever, I think this fiscal year is going to be one in which we're going to have, much more muted numbers back in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. And that's pretty much the cycle. We get some good years occasionally. I don't think we'll be hitting the 7% number this year unless something dramatic shifts.
The good news for us, Rob, is we've got such, with the credit adjustment process being the way it is, the last few years of great performance by the system, put us in a position where we may not have great performance this year, but we will not suffer the immediate consequence of having a large increase in our unfunded liabilities or a sudden increase in the employer contribution rate, because those smoothing activities will mute that.
And those smoothing activities are designed to, with the understanding that most pension plans have a combination of equities and bonds and other investments, and they go through cycles, and the smoothing tends to allow you to run your business in a way that's, makes a little more sense in year-to-year, mark-to-market type stuff.
Last down year 2011, is that the last?
I would say our last down year was probably fiscal year 09. That finished on June of 09 is my guess.
Yeah, I think we only
Actually, I
had,
have that. Let me
I think we only had one down.
Okay, so we're not gonna have anything more than.
Yeah, our last negative year was in 09.
Is that what's
Okay,
going on?
good.
It was in 09.
All right, so we set.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as long as we don't go below 0.
So I think we're in pretty good shape. We had a great committee meeting last time around, and we have another one coming up in March, and we're going to talk, Amy, if we can possibly reschedule that. No, it's not the board's decision, to the following Wednesday, the 25th. Check with Erwin, it's good for his calendar. I've got a personal conflict on the 18th, that whole week, actually. So I don't know if we can.
So everybody will let me know. We'll let everyone know.
We can't vote on change of anything, right?
No.
No,
It's just.
No, what I'll do is I'll notify each of the investment committee members to see if they can change their schedule to March the 25th.
Which would be the following Wednesday from the
Wednesday.
schedule.
We could move it forward, but that puts us in a position where we wouldn't necessarily have our financial information.
Yeah.
So if we move it back to the 25th, Rob can have his rebalancing information
Yeah.
available there, the recommendations as far as mid-cap managers and any of the other issues that we need to take up at that time. Just move it back.
So the 25th would work, or the 11th, but I think Erwin's right, I think the 25th would give us more.
25th is good for me too. so.
Yeah, me too, it's fine.
Okay.
We'll
Good?
notify you.
Perfect. And that's it for my report, so
Thank you, Rob, appreciate you coming in.
absolutely, thank you.
Rob, you may want to stay just a second. I know I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
But on the pages in your book following the flash report, there's a comparison of the 4 state retirement systems as far as their performance is concerned. Each quarter in, we like to provide you with this information to help you understand not only how we're doing, but how we're doing relative to other systems. For the 4th quarter ended December the 31st, 2014, you can see for the quarter and fiscal year to date, we're right in line. We're a little bit better than the other 4 state systems. We have lost a little less than they have, if that's a good thing. Never good to lose, but it's better to be losing less than maybe others are losing. If that's a good thing.
That's a way of saying it, yeah.
The 1-year returns, you can see the 1-year returns through December the 31st, we're at 5.76%, kind of what we're talking about. The 3-year numbers up at 12.71%, and their 5-year returns at 10.13. I'm sorry, the 5-year returns at 10.13, and the 10-year returns at the 6.25 level. So you can kind of see how things change over time from looking at this chart. And then down at the bottom, you have the statewide systems. I always tend to look at the highs and the lows. The thing that really concerns me when I look at this chart, if I were a member of a legislature, I would have to be looking at that statewide systems, and in particular focusing on the firefighters and EMPers, especially for the short run, but firefighters pretty much across the spectrum. Firefighters was down 1.7% for the quarter and for the fiscal year, down up 1.7% for the 1-year return, up 6.5%, less than half of what the other systems in the state have been up over the last 3 years, and less than 60% of what the other systems have earned over a 5-year period of years, and then only 4.4% for the last 10 years. And when you begin to compound those numbers at those differences, you really begin to see what can happen to a system if you make bad investment decisions or you have things that happen that are out of the ordinary. It can certainly harm not only your system, but it certainly gives a question, I think, to everybody about what's going on. So I point that out. You can see the returns for all of them. Most everybody has struggled recently, but had pretty good returns over the 1, 3, and 5-year return period. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them. But it's always enlightening to me to see how others are doing relative to ourselves, and be sure that we're accountable to at least those standards that everybody else is adhering to.
Okay.
Right, I'll guys, we see y'all later.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you. All right,
Thank you.
item number 8, does Chris do the financial report for us?
Okay.
It's under tab 5, right?
Okay, so the first 2 pages are the check register for December, which you can see all of our normal expenses. We had one rollover for Kenneth Williams on the first page. When you go to the second page, right there up at the top, we had just a handful of refunds in early December for Mr. Brian Davis, Mr. Glenn Becknell, Mr. Matthew Mason, Mr. Robert Faison, and Mr. Stephen Gorman. All of the other expenses, we had a few building maintenances for our airflow, otherwise all normal expenses. If you turn to the next page, the next pages are for January. On the first page, we had a refund of contributions for Mr. Jimmy Lee Brown, and otherwise all of our normal expenses for January.
Some of those guys must have been cadets that got out early.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, they
Because
were,
it's not a lot of money, it's,
all right.
right.
okay.
That was kind of like a little cleanup at the same time.
Oh, okay.
The next page is our statement of net assets held in trust for pension benefits. If you look at that very bottom figure, it gives you our total $622,857,418. And then on the very next page, you see the statement of changes, where you'll see that in the first column where it gives you the current month information, kind of in line with what Rob spoke of. We had a little bit of a loss there with the investments, just very, very small. And so that gives us that net decrease figure all the way at the bottom of that first column for the current month for January of just over $4 million. Our year-to-date this year is still in the positive, $691,000 and change, and that's the third column year-to-date. The next page is the budget to actual for the 7 months ending January 31st. That gives you our annual budget there, and then the budget for the 7 months in the very next column, and then our actual figures, and then our budget over and unders. And we're still looking good in all categories, I think, except for that legal fees just kind of carry us throughout the year there. I know we're not voting, but does anybody have any questions on on the financial side. And then the very next page is the NV market value with accrual for January 31st and JP Morgan, and I'll just read those balances for the record.
Is that necessary? Because we're going to have to represent.
Yeah,
Oh, no, it's not necessary.
not necessarily.
Well, you
Yeah.
just presented with a package, right? So
Yeah.
that'll be good.
Yeah, yes, that's okay, you don't have to read it.
Okay.
Maybe I will do that for no reason. We can't vote on it anyway. If you really want to read it, we'll let you. Save it for next time. Okay, thank you, Kristen, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and we've already discussed the software and the actuarial services. We can't approve any elimination of warranty and benefits, so, is there any other business anyone wants to discuss? Kim?
A couple of things. I just wanted to mention this to you all. It's not really anything that we need to take action on. It actually came across my computer right before the meeting started, so I wasn't able to make Erwin aware of it either. But Senate Bill 2 has been filed, and this bill is to repeal Section 2 of Act 859 of 2014. And that was by Claytor and Peacock, so I just thought you guys may want to be aware of that.
What is that one? I'm sorry.
That is the kernel amendment.
The kernel?
That, yes.
Thank you.
So I thought you might want to be aware of that. And then, again, nothing that you need to take action on, but just a little priority list. Like I said, Erwin and I have been working on priorities. It's just 3 items on there. We've already discussed 2 of them. It's not really necessary to discuss the third. It's just something that we've been working on here in the office that we thought maybe board members may want to be aware of. So just wanted to pass that out to you. Did I give you one?
Mm-hmm.
I did? Okay. And that's really all I have.
Kim, just so Bobby might know what they are, if you would just maybe just mention
Oh, I'm
them so he
sorry.
can hear them.
Yeah, the three priorities, and these are operational priorities, and you know every year we have investment priorities. So these are the operational priorities of the system. And it was the actuarial services, the impending retirement of Charles Hall, and the fact that in 2016 we'll be going with Gary Curran. Evaluation of the retirement system software, we've already discussed those 2 items. And then the third thing that we're going to be evaluating this year are our staffing needs. And I don't really know what that entails yet. I'm still researching and investigating exactly what we need here in the retirement system. We've had 4 employees for ever. And our needs have changed. We've grown. We have additional duties that have been mandated to us by the legislature. So I'm not real sure at this time if that means we need another full-time person or if we may need to reorganize what we have currently in-house. So we're kind of investigating that, and maybe we'll come back to you at a later date in this year and have an update on that and maybe a recommendation for that as well.
Okay. Look forward to hearing that. Any other new business discussion? Denise, you have anything?
Yeah.
No? Okay, all right, well, there's no motions needed, so.